There's so many dimensions in life that the arts touch on. Everything from the heart, the soul, the mind, the imagination, the senses, the creativity. The arts can expand our consciousness internally, but they can also bring us much more into contact with the natural environment, which is so essential today. My name is Paul Schafer. I've worked in the cultural field for more than 50 years, and I'm director of the World Culture Project based in Markham, Canada. I grew up in Toronto, and I had the very good fortune of having excellent parents who were very committed to giving myself and my brother Murray, who's a composer, a good education in the arts. I took piano lessons and singing lessons and sang in a choir and took art lessons. When I got to school, I got quite interested in sports and football and basketball and playing billiards more than I was attending classes, but eventually got out of there and got on to university at the University of Toronto and decided to go on and do an MA in economics. I think it's important to be specific about the kind of age that we're living in, because it makes us aware of many things that are going on. I came to the conclusion that it really was an economic age in the world we're living in, and it started in 1776 when Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations. I feel that most of the important decisions that are now being made by governments, by corporations, by international institutions, they're all making them on the basis of economics as the first and most important factor. It wouldn't be difficult to justify the claim that the economic age is the greatest human achievement in history. Billions of people have had their standard of living and quality of life increased quite considerably. But at the same time, during the whole development of the economic age over 250 years, the natural environment was ignored. And I think that crisis is basically a crisis that has to do with climate change and global warming, and also growing shortages of basic natural resources and foodstuffs. You develop a whole system of theory and practice, and it's based on excluding the natural environment from any consideration. The architectural equivalent to this would be very much like building a huge city or building a colossal office tower on sand or on muck. There's no foundation. And I don't believe that it's possible after 250 years to take the natural environment and insert it into the ideology of the economic age after the fact. The conclusion that I came to is that we have to move out of an economic age in the future. Different people have different ideas about where we should go from here. My particular interest is in a cultural age and what could be achieved in a cultural age that can't be achieved in an economic age. Throughout the course of history, there were more than 150 different perceptions and definitions of culture in the world. Going right back to Cicero, who lived before Christ, he defined culture as the philosophy or culture of the soul. And when I read that the first time, I was so struck by that. I thought, isn't that a remarkable insight, you know, into a lot of things that have to do with cultivation, environment, philosophy, and the soul of people, which is supposedly at the basis of our lives. My perception of culture and my definition of culture that I use as a working definition, culture is the complex whole, or it's the total way of life of people. If you're creating any whole, then what it is a blending of all of the particular parts. If you find a good balance and harmony between all those parts, then you have a very effective whole. So to me, what's at the very root of the age of culture is how you create the balance and the harmony between a variety of activities or forces. And where a cultural age could be much more effective than an economic age is you'd find that balance that reduces the impact that we're having on the environment by opening up some of those more moral and ethical and artistic and creative activities. The problem in living in an economic age, the arts became valued for the economic impact. So it's easy to say, you know, if they make money, then let's develop them. If they don't make money, forget about them. And what should be at the centerpiece of culture and cultures? I feel it should be the arts, because we're seeing that the arts are useful at every stage of the life process, from the earliest years of childhood to the very, very final years of adulthood. So the arts are the gateway. We can open up on our understanding about culture and cultures through the arts. I decided that I wanted to start a world culture project to commemorate and coincide with the World Decade for Cultural Development. It was an attempt to bring to the fore a lot of the thinking of generations and indeed centuries of people that were cultural scholars or had written about cultural issues. Because I felt that there wasn't any literature really on culture as a complex whole or a total way of life that was applied to today and tomorrow rather than yesterday. I have been writing a number of books on culture over the years. I'm trying to get a movement started about the need for a nature of a cultural age. The Age of Culture project is a project designed to generate discussions through the creation of what I'm calling cultural hubs in different parts of the world. We're in the process of starting one in Africa and India. So if you take a particular hub, the one that has started and is most advanced is in the Ukraine, that has its headquarters now at a national university in Kiev, and they have there a research institute for spirituality and a UNESCO chair for upbringing and education in cultural spirituality for young people. And specifically, they're talking about how their research and activities and publications concerning training and education for young people for living in a cultural age blends with this idea generally. Those are really the two basic dimensions or functions of these cultural hubs. Kick off a discussion about the need for a cultural age, then relate your own activities to considering how that applies. The cultural community, they have to provide the driving force in the same way that environmentalists provided the driving force for the environmental developments that have taken place in the last 30 years. Next to that, I think governments have the key role to play, because good governments have to have the holistic perspective that is necessary to take the past, the present, the future into consideration. And ultimately, of course, people play the greatest role of all, because they have to shift from a world that's been based on economics to a world that's been based on culture. I kind of feel you couldn't go wrong if you try and model your life on nature, because nature really has to do with transformation, change, understanding how nature functions, how it cleans itself, how it expresses itself. So I've tried to model my life's development on nature. So it's a very spiritual experience, and it helps tremendously in clearing your mind and refreshing your vitality and your creativity. If somebody asked me to make a short statement about living a cultural life would be all about, I would say it's probably Goethe, the famous German poet and scholar, who said, live in the whole, live in the good, and live in the beautiful. And I think that pretty well sums up for me, and it has for a long period of time, what it means to live a cultural life.